Okay, greetings everyone. This is Josh, and we have another episode of Horror Hangouts. My guest today is Brooklyn Attic Books. She has her own YouTube channel. How are you doing this morning, Brooklyn?
I'm doing great, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing terrific here on a early Saturday morning. So, obviously, well, why don't you explain about your YouTube channel and what it is you do on there?
Oh my gosh. So, the YouTube channel is just like a small offshoot of everything that I do. It started with just I wanted to get on more channels, hence why we met on Slasher.
Right.
But my original platform that I really like built out, and that's where you can find me and everything I do on. My alarm just went off for our podcast.
Oh,
That's funny. Um, so you can find me on Instagram, Brooklyn Attic Books, and that's really where I started. And then from there, I have my own podcast as well with another bookseller because that's my main thing is that I'm a bookseller, but also a book collector. I think a lot of people do that though. They sell and
mhm.
collect to feed their hobby.
And is the name of so do you have like your own like store or shop or bookstore that you
Online, I
run
do.
on? It's an online thing? Okay.
Yes, online, I do.
And that's called Brooklyn Attic Books. I would
Yep,
Yep.
brooklynatticbooks.com.
I had a friend on Slasher ask me, "Well, ask her if she's the one that runs that online bookstore, Brooklyn Attic Books." I'm like, "Okay, I will.
Yes,
I'm pretty sure it's the same thing, but well, excellent. So where did obviously you love reading because I look at between your posts on Slasher and your YouTube channel, you read a lot of books. So
I
where
do.
did your love of reading start?
I don't know where exactly my love of reading started. I'm an immigrant. I'm Hungarian. So my
Oh, okay.
family came to this country when I was really little. So I'm like your typical New Yorker. I
Mhm.
am, like that half generation that immigrated to America in New
Right.
York City and kind of like, moved up in the world from there, right? As an American, continued
Hmm.
American New Yorker. So, I guess because I began learning the language through books when I was a child. I was at that age where I was learning to read, but I was also going to school. And so I guess that's where it just propelled. A lot of people use television to
Hmm.
learn another language. It's interesting, right? So
Right.
that's where it kind of started. And then the love of horror books really started. I think I was 10 years old, and my parents and I took like a weekend road trip,
Hmm.
driving past here, actually, where I am currently at right now in the Mountains. And they stopped on the side of the road at a flea market. And for 50 cents, as a 10-year-old, I picked up Pet Cemetery by Stephen King randomly, like a
Right.
paperback. And I read it from cover to cover and I was obsessed.
So I guess Pet Cemetery was your, I guess, gateway into horror then.
Right, right. Into the like the adult world horror.
Hmm. Right. So after reading that, did you then go and watch the movie after that?
Back when I was a kid, so that was in the 90s,
Hmm.
I mean, we didn't even get cable till maybe about like the late 90s when it was more
Right.
like available, right?
Hmm.
So it was whatever came on like channel 11, right? Saturday, Sunday montage movies,
Yes.
Poltergeist, Exorcist. That's where I learned about those.
Hmm. Awesome. I had started with, I grew up in Indiana, and the city I grew up in, and every city used to have this like a little local television station that would show maybe late at night. They'd have
Yeah.
some generic host, some sort of horror movie, and they used to show all the old ones. So I got started on the old Universal movies first. So Dracula,
Cool.
Frankenstein, Wolfman, and all of those. And that's worked my way up the ladder from there. So, well, I think a lot of people started off that way, but depending on how I'm old. So,
Yeah, depending your age, because I have like a niece that's like 6, and she's like, "Oh, I saw the new Chucky." Like they just stream everything now.
Right, right, right.
And it's
My
like, okay, cool.
yeah, like my son when he was probably 4 watched Halloween for the first time, the original one, and it didn't even scare him. So like,
Oh, yes,
okay,
that's another thing. They're so dull to it. Yeah.
you're like, no big deal. Okay. um, so right now, since you've been obviously heavily involved in the horror book genre, what are your thoughts on right now the indie horror book scene?
That is a conglomerate of things, right?
Mhm.
It's like
Right.
the perfect storm. So, you're talking about the millennials and
Mhm.
the elder millennials, as they're called. I think you're in that
I'm a
genre.
Gen Xer
And
actually,
you're
so
an author yourself, correct?
correct. I've gotten a couple out.
Okay. So I think it's that we had when we were kids, right? We were
Mhm.
either introduced to there was a trilogy set with like grim art in it,
Mhm.
and it was stories to read in the dark. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I
Yeah,
do. Yeah, yeah.
little kids were heavily influenced by this book when we were all little kids.
Mhm.
That and Goosebumps. I think this is where it all started. And then everybody graduated to like around
Mhm.
what I said was like
Right.
you're drawn to Stephen King, right? If you come
Right.
across Stephen King, you're drawn to Stephen King. And at an early age, that's very impactful, right? So I'm not a writer. I'm like the true
Right.
reader. I like to hunker down with a book, and that's that. Um, I admire you guys so much because it takes so much talent and creativity to come up with those characters, and it's incredible. I admire it highly, and I really think that it was the R.L. Stein kids that grew up
Mhm.
and they graduated to either King or Dean Koontz or Anne Rice or any one of these three, right? Because if you
Right.
talk to anybody, these are highly influential at an early age. I actually just talked to somebody that was a huge fan of Michael Crichton, which is somebody I never hear anybody be like, "Oh, I read
Right.
every book
Right.
by him." Have you read Michael Crichton?
I have not.
I haven't either.
It's
Jurassic Park.
interesting. I didn't. It's almost like in my journey when I finally decided late in life, because I was, like I said, I'm a Gen Xer and I'm now 50 now, but it was like last year that I said, you know what, I'm going to start writing and get done with it. And I was never a huge reader of fiction. Most stuff I read is like historical biographies and whatnot.
Oh,
But
cool.
as a kid, did read Washington Irving's Tale of Sleepy Hollow, and
Okay.
I read Frankenstein and Dracula, Bram
Oh
Stoker's
my
and
God,
Mary
Dracula is
Shelley's.
amazing.
So I got started on that, and then it wasn't until later as an adult that I read Clive Barker. I actually read him first before reading Stephen King. Read
Oh,
the
cool.
Hellbound Heart because I was a huge fan of Hellraiser. So let me read the book, and which is a fairly easy read for the
Yes,
most
it
part because
is.
it's less than 200 pages, and I'm actually reading Scarlet Gospels now. But yeah, and then I've read a little bit of King. I'm not as big of I mean, I like some of his books, but he's just for me anyway a little hard to read sometimes because
Yeah.
he goes off to so many different tangents,
Yes, he
and
does. Uh-huh.
it's like, can we stay focused on the story? And that's not to
Yes.
be grudge. I mean, Stephen King has contributed so much to the genre in both book and film, but so I guess so that's great. And getting back to Michael Crichton, I mean, I know who he is. It's like some of these stories like R.L. Stein come after my childhood, so I'm not as big
Yes.
into that.
Uh-huh.
And with the whole Jurassic Park, it's like had those stories or those movies came out 10 years earlier when I was, say early 80s when I was a young kid, I would have been into them. But by the time they came out in the 90s, at that point, I'm a teenager, I'm out of high school, I'm on to other stuff, so they never
Right.
really hit me. like to do my younger friends who are millennials.
Yes, yes. So I think that there is a huge pop off right now. So like I said, it's a conglomerate of things, right? So you
Hmm.
have all these people that are now at the age where they're like doing real shit in the real world, right? They're not
Hmm.
kids anymore, but
Right.
they're heavily influenced by, let's say, R.L. Stein or King or any one of
Mm.
these. Uh, and then the internet, right? So like self-publishing became huge, and
Right.
indie presses are everywhere now. They're opening and closing constantly. So I try to support where I can, right? But you can only do so much. Like I could go
Oh
broke
yeah.
as an adult. I can go completely broke with my adult money buying and trying to support everybody all the time.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's like a lot of authors that I've gotten to meet, and this has been the best part about starting author or being an author is meeting all the other authors. And I feel bad because sometimes like I haven't bought their book yet to read it because I
Yeah.
combination of A, having the time to do it, and B, of
Yeah.
course, the money to buy them. So it's like that's why I never like, if someone doesn't end up buying my book, I don't, I understand there's 20 other or 1,000 other authors doing the same thing as I'm doing. So it's
Oh,
tough to,
100%.
and
Yeah.
that's probably the toughest thing. And you probably know this for being a self-published author is getting noticed because you can post all you want to on social media, but there's 1,000 other authors doing the exact same thing. So
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
getting noticed. And then you have, and I think I saw you do a podcast where you guys mentioned this, some of these companies,
Hmm.
so-called publishing companies that basically take advantage of newer authors, say, "Oh, we'll get you published if you pay us X amount of dollars." And I've had them run, not knowing who they were at first, approach me and goes, "This doesn't sound right. I think I'll just take my chances self-publishing for free on Kindle Direct Publishing or something like that." But or
There's a
Lulu.
lot of scams. There's a lot of scams that get run on authors, on even people. Oh God, Amazon is overrun with scams because
Hmm.
Amazon, there'll be people that watch like what the top books are selling, and then
Right.
they will like print fake copies. Like they'll get one and they'll pay like they'll photocopy the whole book or like copy it completely, and then they'll sell it.
Uh-huh.
And authors will go to signing events and then be like, guys, where did you buy these books from? Because they're fake, they're not my book, like they're not authentic from the
Right.
publisher. And they're like, we went on Amazon, what do you mean? And it's nobody's fault
Hmm.
apparently, and Amazon doesn't take fault. And unless you put in the claim against this and then it gets taken down, but behind that one scam there's 50 other just like it.
Right.
It's crazy, and they take zero responsibility for it.
S- Of course they do. Well, they're a big, huge company, and unfortunately, it's almost like a means to an end. I mean, that's where my books are being sold on is
Yes.
on Amazon, but it's like, what other choice do I have? I have
Y-
tried
so to,
Lulu, but they don't have the reach or the that Amazon has.
so to add to your point though,
Mm.
is on my podcast Bookseller Bullshit that I run with Jason, who
Mhm.
actually owns an actual bookshop, and I do more virtual sales. um he we talk about how uh uh we're not telling you don't support your friends that are self-publishing on Amazon. We're not saying that.
Right.
We're saying just be diligent, do your due diligence. Go to the publisher if you're buying a
Uh,
book specifically. Go to your bookstores, even Barnes and Noble. Like
right.
just go to a legit bookstore. Amazon runs a lot of scams. Like if I go, oh my God, Josh, this book, The Rats by James Herbert, this is
Mhm.
awesome. You got to get it. And you go on Amazon, like, oh, let me see how much how much a copy is, and you just buy it. And it's out of print, so there
Right.
could be a lot of scams,
Mhm.
reprints of it or whatever. It could happen. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? yeah, that's like probably my next step is to try to approach local bookstores and see if they want to sell some of my copies or whatever. I think,
Yeah, you should do a book signing where you talk about your book.
oh yeah, for sure. It's just like, and then another thing too is I might do some horror cons and get a vendor's table and do that as well because I've met some authors that way as well, going attending some of these conventions.
That sounds awesome. I love going and meeting people in person. I think that's
Yeah,
like one of the most fun things.
oh for sure. So I was gonna say, I think you already answered my next question, what the catalyst was for this big booming scene, and I think you've already answered that through people reading R.L. Stein and all that stuff, and then the ability to self-publish.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh, and to self market, right? A lot of people
mhm.
use TikTok and Instagram, their socials, to
Oh yeah,
self market themselves.
yeah. I'm on Instagram too. I just don't get a lot out of it right now because
No, something happened with Instagram. It's all messed up, and people have been talking about it. But I mean, the bots are overrunning that page, and they're mismanaging it so bad. Oh, it's so bad.
yeah, it's so frustrating because anymore when I get like new followers on Instagram, they're obviously spam accounts. It's
Mm.
like, and I just like delete, delete, delete. I have like 8 times the followers on Slasher than I
Oh
do
yeah, yeah,
on
yeah.
Instagram, and I guarantee you every single one on Slasher are legit people. I think I've maybe run into 1 or 2 accounts that I suspected might be, and you're gonna have a few, slip through the cracks, but Instagram is just ridiculous. I like anymore. I just use or people that. Are you still there?
Oh yes, you cut out a little bit.
No, I was just saying that the only reason I'm on Instagram is just to maybe follow people who I don't follow on Slasher, and I try to, hey, why don't you go join Slasher and get off this platform? But
Oh,
or
I tell
following
people
certain
about it all the
celebrities.
time. Mhm.
Oh yeah, me too. And they're like, well, I don't know, I don't have time. Like, you have time to be on Instagram, you can go on Slasher, and it's, granted, Slasher's not perfect, but they're bringing more stuff in there that you can do slowly, like being able to post videos and all that, but didn't. So, yeah, so
I just
yeah,
recently joined Slasher, so I'm so new to it
mm,
that I'm not like fully familiar with like any of the platforms. So whatever they do, I mean, I've already noticed that it has way less bots. It has like way less commercials, ads. Like people
mhm,
aren't trying to constantly sell me stuff. Like
right.
I don't know. It's cool. I feel
Oh yeah,
like Instagram has turned into one giant like infomercial.
just about. um, and like I said, there's some things on Instagram I still enjoy, but it's, as you know, it's a pain in the butt to even post a video on there. Like, you can post a video from your phone but you have to do it a certain way if you want to put like a link in there. You have to
Yeah, I'm not
post
sure.
it
I
as
think it's all connected with like Facebook Meta. I disconnected it because I didn't want them watching what I do.
right, and it's, yeah, I like, one of these days I'm just going to intentionally get myself kicked off of there just to be an ass. But so when you talk about horror, do you have like a particular thing with horror? It has so many different subgenres to it. Do you
Hmm.
have a specific favorite subgenre of horror that you like, or is it just all in any?
I do like all and any. The least favorite I have, it's like that woman in peril, but inside her own brain. I can't stand those, like the psychological
Oh
horrors.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can't, like where she's got to work through some family trauma from her past, and it's like, oh God, how many different how many different ways can people rewrite this? But no, you're right. I don't.
Mm,
And I like a really eclectic range of books too. And my horror goes from like anywhere from like true crime
mm-hmm.
to like even science fiction, right? Like
Oh yeah.
it just it spreads like I've never messed with it, but this is one of the books that I've brought up with me
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy it. This is a splatter western.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a genre I've never like messed with. So like to me that's cool, you know. It's new. To me it's going to be a new read. Like the most splatter western I got was maybe book 1 and 2 is like as far as I got in the series, but the Dark Tower by Stephen King,
Yeah.
that's a little bit splatter western, I guess, ish.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like you. I don't really have a particular favorite genre of horror, whether it's in book or film. I mean, I'm not movie wise. I'm not a big fan of found footage films. I just
Oh,
can't.
really? Okay.
I just don't like the look of them. It's like I could only get 15 minutes into um, Blair Witch because I'm like watching this. I'm like, I've seen better production quality from my old homemade videos my grandfather used to make in the 70s. This is I just don't like that look
Yeah.
of it, and so it just throws me off. But
Yeah.
it's like even my own writing, I've done like a horror western, and
Oh,
now
have
I've done
you?
yes, and then my most recent one is vampire erotic horror. So it's
Okay.
like I will jump from any and who knows what the next one will be. It'll probably be sci-fi horror, who knows, but
Yeah.
so
I
I'll
think
just
sci-fi needs more recognition.
well, there's like so much well, it's like here we go. And I plan on seeing the movie tomorrow, hopefully, but Alien Rom, the whole Alien, that's like the I don't say it's the beginning of sci-fi horror, but it's one of the most recognized sci-fi horror movies that
Yes.
have come out, along with The Thing and
I want to
uh,
read the first Alien book by Alan Dean Foster. That is on
mhm.
my. I'm
Oh
actually
wow,
actively looking for it because I've sold a couple copies and I
hmm
thought I had one put to the side for myself and I did not. So it's funny you talk about movies the way I talk about books. Like
right,
I could fall asleep at every movie all the time. Like I'm
right,
not a big movie person. Like I specifically have to like mentally prepare myself to watch a movie because
interesting,
otherwise I end up doing stuff
hmm
around instead of like paying attention or go to the movies, but that's like a special event, right?
right,
Yeah, no, but I could sit and get lost in a book for hours. No
excellent.
problem. But for
So,
me, a move like a 2-hour movie, I'm like, "Oh my god, it's a waste of time. What am I sitting here for? Like, this alien is breathing on this woman for, like, 15 minutes already. Like, hurry up."
and that's cool too, and obviously in my next question being when people think of horror writers, it's always Stephen King and great, but people seem to it's almost like with Stephen King, I kind of wish he would like retire just
Yeah, a lot of people
because
feel that way.
I
Yes.
know and that sounds
Mhm.
bad. I'm just saying, and it's not his fault, but it's his books that everyone always gravitates to with while overlooking all the good indie authors that are out
Mhm.
there and all the up and coming authors. So that being said, who are some of your favorite indie horror authors
Um,
and
I
or
don't know
books?
if he's considered indie because he's signed with
Mm,
Penguin Random House, but
okay.
I became obsessed with this series. It's a duology and it's
Mhm.
post-apocalyptic. It reminds me of The Stand and
Okay.
Swan Song. It's like it's awesome. Keith Rosen, Fever House.
Mhm.
Oh my god. So I actually ended up getting this. This is coming out in 3 weeks, The Devil by Name. This is
Uh-huh.
the second part of the book, like because it's a duology only. And see, it's like an uncorrected proof.
Right.
Well, this one's like the hardcover. If you haven't, Fever House has to be on everybody's TBR. It's amazing. It's so good. He does such a good job. It's a
Yeah,
really good
it's on
read.
my list because I saw your video on it. I'm like, boy, she's talking a
Yeah.
lot of good about this, so this is definitely
Yeah.
on my list of books to purchase and read because I'm like
Or get
thinking
it
of
from your library. They need support, and by borrowing
oh
books
yeah,
from them, you support them.
okay,
And you support the author too because you're requesting his name at the library.
excellent, excellent. So that's one. Is there any others that you really like to champion?
Oh my gosh. There's all kinds, right? Like these are the books that I all brought up with me, like in case I was gonna just like sit around and read all summer.
Hmm.
But I'm also like a really huge fan of like the vintage books. So
Okay.
like The Rats is a classic, like
Hmm.
it reads like a B-rated horror movie from the 80s, you know?
Oh,
And
excellent.
just really awesome classic science fiction books.
Hmm.
I recently started a classic science fiction book club and I have
Hmm.
a Discord for it. I
Yeah.
don't know if you want to. I'll send you a link if people want to join.
Oh,
And
okay.
then I'm constantly reading, just the old stuff. I mean, this John Wyndham is an English author from like the 50s and his stuff is amazing. It didn't like age badly. The classics that are good for a reason. They just don't
Yeah.
age bad. Um but yeah, I have like talking about horror science fiction.
Hmm.
I picked this up, Full Immersion by Gemma Amor.
Okay.
This I got from the
Excellent.
UK actually. And then you a lot of the new stuff that was not represented earlier. Actually, Sacrament by Clive Barker was the
Oh, yeah.
first time that there was like a gay main character represented in horror,
Hmm.
especially his like dark fantasy, because that was like his coming out book actually. But Maggie Thrash, Rainbow Black, this is an indie
Hmm.
author that just came out. This book just came out this year,
Right.
and it's more of like that queer horror
Okay.
community, and it's being represented left and right in
Mm.
2024, and that's awesome, right? And then you look at international, I think it's International Horror Women Author Month.
Hmm.
Tender is the Flesh. You can't, like,
Oh,
everybody
wow.
raves about this book. I haven't read it yet, and it's a
Hmm.
quick read, but I can't wait to get to it. I'm not going to butcher her name, Augustina Bazterica. But yeah, and then you have like the indie authors that are self-publishing on Instagram and on Amazon and
Right.
just marketing themselves. I mean, this author described his book as giggle punk, like giggle core, as like, and I'm like, I have no idea what that is, but it's extreme horror.
Hmm.
And this is in the likes of maybe more like Michael McDowell, that Southern Gothic horror. I mean, I
Right.
love it. There's so much cool stuff coming out. There really is.
Excellent. Well, good, good, because we need to get a shout out to all those authors as
I
well.
know.
And I mean, there's so many, like you said.
There's so
Um,
many.
I was like thinking when you said post-apocalypse, um, there's an author, and she's occasionally she's not on Slasher very often, but her name is Terry Legui, and she wrote a book, and she's writing a series of books too that kind of has that,
Oh,
um,
cool.
kind of like The Stand, kind of it has similar themes to it. And now I'm blanking on the name of the book, and I sincerely apologize, Gary, if you're watching, but it's really good. Let me actually, I can look it up real quick here. Just bear with me. Um,
That's so cool. I thought it was such a cool idea that Keith Rosen with Fever House did an ode to those, because they're like post-apocalyptic epic novels, basically Swan Song and The Stand. And in the second book, which is not out yet, it's coming out September 10th. It's he does have an Easter egg in there mentioning The Stand.
Yeah, the name of the book, by the way, is called Raptured. So
Oh,
that's
cool, cool. That
I was
sounds
like thinking
awesome.
about. Yeah, it's a really good book, and I know she's working on. In fact, she was like my second guest ever that I had on when I started doing these, and I know she's working tirelessly on the second book. 'Cause I think it's good. Sounds like it's going to be a 4 or 5 book series that she's doing. So yeah, that's one I like to champion along with Delavan House, which is co-written by Natasha Sinclair, who's in Scotland, and Ruth Ann Jaggy, who is from New York but now lives in Texas. And I've gotten to know both of them, and That's if you're into like folklore horror that
Oh,
has elements of witchcraft and so forth. It's a really good book, and I know they're going to have their second part of that series coming out soon. I hope to have them on the show eventually here for too long. But
very cool. Very
yeah,
cool. Folk horror is
mm,
so like in right now. Oh my god. I just got some folk horror Appalachian stuff from Tony Evans actually.
hmm.
Yeah, no, it's so in right now. It's very, very posh.
What? So yeah, there are so many books that you read. What is it that a book about a book that will attract you and say, I want to read that? Is it just simply the cover, or do you take time to read through what the synopsis is of the book and to see if it's something that you'd be interested in?
You know what's funny? Because I'm so involved with the Bookstagram world and
Hmm.
BookTube, and I just see what's popular, right? And a lot of people will just talk to me about books all day, and I love it. That's why I'm so like active because
Hmm.
I love doing this, right? I love talking about books. I love reading them. And so people will just recommend things to me over and over and over. And
Hmm.
then one day I'll be like, you know what? This, I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to read it. And then I'll read it and I'm like, oh my God, why haven't I read this before? Like earlier. So usually when things are recommended to me is when
Yeah.
I'm blown away. And then usually when I'm like, oh, let me just check out this random thing and read some good reviews on it, usually I'm not as ecstatic about it.
Right.
Right? Right. So I try to steer towards more recommended stuff.
Hmm. Okay. Excellent. Now I know you're not obviously the biggest big movie fan, but in recent years there's been all this, you know, companies just making reboot after remake after
Oh, yeah.
sequel
Uh-huh.
after sequel, and it kind of hurts me because, or pisses me off a little bit. There are so many great books out there, so many great authors, so many great stories that could be made into a good horror movie, I think,
Mm,
that aren't named Stephen King or aren't named uh, insert name. And I like Anne Rice too, but
mhm.
no longer with us, or Clive Barker, or whomever, going back to H.P. Lovecraft. Are there any books that you've read that you could say to yourself, and I know you're not a huge movie fan, but you could say to yourself, you know what, this book would make an excellent movie?
Alright, so there definitely is, I was think when you said that, one popped into my head. Or maybe I didn't read it this year. Oh, it's messing with me now.
Oh no,
Okay.
that's okay. It's early in the morning.
There's a bunch that could be really good. What was I just thinking? So one that could really be turned into something, and the person to do it should be Tim Burton. um, is and this is going back again. This is vintage stuff. That
Mm.
he's not around anymore, but Michael McDowell's Blackwater series, I think, should
Oh
be
yeah.
turned into like a movie or something.
Hmm.
It's so wild. Like the storyline is so dramatic. It's like family. It's around like a southern family that
Hmm.
builds their riches in the early 1800s, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, something like that. And it's got like swamp creatures and like all this kind of crazy stuff on top of that. So Michael McDowell wrote the screenplay for Beetlejuice. So
Okay.
think like that's the type of crazy little creatures and things that he does in his books, and that's why everybody loves it and is so obsessed with it. Valancourt is an indie press that actually started republishing his old
Hmm.
books, so you can find it on their website, the reprints. But that's a cool one. Hmm.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I've always said if I ever had the money, like if I owned my own studio, I would have a team of 4 or 5 people doing nothing but reading newer, or horror books written
Oh,
by
I got a newer
authors.
one that's good.
Okay, which one?
The Fisherman by John Langan, and I know a lot of people would agree with me on that.
And I've heard of that one, and I forget who it
Mhm.
was that brought it up to me, but might have been you. I
Mhm.
don't know, but
No,
yeah.
I haven't. I read it last year at some
Hmm.
point because so many people were saying it's one of the best newest horror. It's very Lovecraftian.
Hmm.
So if you're into that old Lovecraftian, and it's
Okay.
also there it's what do they call it? It's like when the main characters are mourning, they're in mourning, like it's that
Hmm.
kind of horror. So they're like already clouded like in the head a little bit. Oh,
Right.
it's such a good book. And that's a short read too, under 200 pages.
Okay.
I think.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. Novellas seem to be more my style since
Oh
I've
yeah. I
really
love
gotten
them.
into reading. So, yeah, like I was said, I think if I had a movie company or whatever, I would simply have like a team of 4 or 5 people that do nothing but read books and let me know which ones would make, because some books just can't, it's hard to like make into a movie for various reasons, um, but it's like let's get some new content out there, something fresh out there, so people aren't watching the same old thing. A lot of the responsibility, though, I do put on the movie public for not supporting these more original movies when they come out because they just want to, it's what I call the normie horror crowd that
Ah,
just
yeah.
want to watch Scream, Halloween, whatever,
Oh
um,
yeah.
instead of
I know what you
actually,
mean.
yeah, you know what I'm talking about, but.
It's the same shit in all
Mm.
the sequels. Like, yo, guy from Saw, weren't you supposed to die of cancer in the first movie? Now you're on what, movie 20? Like, what?
I will say that the last Saw movie, Saw X, is probably the best one in the
Is
entire
it?
series. Yeah, yeah, and well, it takes place between Saw 1 and Saw 2, and it
Oh,
ties
so it
in, and
goes back. I see.
yeah, yeah, but it's not very often I would say that the 10th entry in a series is the best one. And I do like the earlier films of that, but after a while, once again, it gets kind of monotonous.
What do
It's
you
like,
mean? You don't like Jason Takes Manhattan? What?
and well, it's funny you say in a couple weeks I'm going to have a discussion video where we're talking about the entire Friday the 13th franchise, so which should be a lot of fun in
That
its
should be a
own
lot
right.
of fun.
Yeah. Oh, trust me, I'm going to do one on Hellraiser, and I'm just going to focus on the first four movies, go to the reboot, and skip all the crap in the middle. But so, well, excellent there. So, is there anything else you'd like to bring up about your anything that's coming that you have coming up on your YouTube channel or your podcast?
Not in particular, to be honest. I'm just kind of, I go with the flow. I To
Hmm.
be honest, if you're going to be one of these people that are involved with the socials, right? So you're
Hmm.
constantly pumping out content, that shit gets you burnt out. So if you just don't put pressure on yourself and you just enjoy
Hmm.
the ride, and when something comes to you and you post about it,
Right.
it's way more enjoyable and it's way less burnout. I see a lot of people who are like real gung ho about making the best social, and then they get burnt out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I like try not to, especially when I have a new book coming out or something. I try to limit to me promoting it anymore once every other week on I'm basically on Slasher, Instagram, and Facebook. So I try to limit only once every other week because if you start doing it every day, people are like gonna tune out because God, all this guy does is blah 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 blah. So it's like
Right.
I just try to keep it minimum when possible because I've found early on in my career that doing that is not going to gain you any sales at all. It really
Mm,
comes down to engaging with other people, letting them get to know you, and then say, "Oh yeah, that's right, he's an author. I think I'll go buy his book or something like that." So, or
absolutely.
or doing well, I did a few weeks ago, doing like a free book giveaway or something like that. So
Oh, I
did work
saw
it.
that. That was
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Sorry you didn't win, but I just didn't end up picking your name out.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. No, very cool. Congrats to the winner.
Yeah, yeah, there was well, I ended up doing there were so many people that were interested, I ended up drawing for 4 winners, so I figured, "Well, why not?" There was, like, 30 people, I think, so I figured I'm gonna go ahead and give out 4 of them, and hopefully that generates enough interest that other people will be interested in it. But
Yeah,
we'll
right.
see.
Do you put your books up on like advanced reader copy websites like NetGalley
Never
for
heard of
early
NetGalley.
reviews? So what people do is they put up their books for early reviews. People can download it as an ebook,
Mm-hmm.
and then they can review it for you on either Goodreads or on Amazon, and
Okay.
then you also get feedback because there's questions that the reviewer gets asked by
Mm-hmm.
the website, and you get to see like how people felt about like the storyline, the characters, or like whatever. I think it's a good way to promote yourself before a release, like before releasing publication. NetGalley.
NetGalley. Okay.
Yeah, you should look into that.
I will. Okay. Well, I think that's well. Yeah, definitely. I'll try anything, but anything that's like legal anyway. But but anyhow, Brooklyn, it's been great having you on. Thanks for joining us today, and
Thanks so much for
everyone. I
having me.
Excellent, and I'll definitely put your link to your YouTube video down in the main description so people check out her channel as well. So until next time, thank you everyone for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.